you guys had a long conversation with Mike Scheuer?
We had a little bit.
And he's the real thing. I mean, was obsessed with Osama bin Laden from very, very early days.
He thinks bin Laden did it.
Yeah.
Anything to say to you I haven't written or said already. So,
well, I mean,
bin Laden did it.
Okay, last question then. Are you familiar with the event on October 10th of 2001, which was the day after the high-grade anthrax was sent to the two major Democratic opponents in the Senate and shut down the Congress for the first time since the British burned it, right, in 1812. And the same day that they put bin Laden on the FBI's 22 terrorist most wanted list, two Israeli agents were caught in having breached a security perimeter in the Mexican parliament with two Glock 9mm, grenades, explosives, and two Pakistani passports. Covered on CNN once, said they followed up, never followed it up. Every major newspaper in Mexico is on the front cover. And we've heard nothing about that. Have you ever heard about that? What does that strike you as when you hear about that?
I never heard about it. That's all it occurs to me. I don't put anything past the Israelis. I think it's entirely possible, but I don't know anything about it.
Did you hear about the so-called dancing Israelis, the 5 celebrating Israelis in New Jersey, who people saw basically flicking Bics and high-fiving when the trade towers were hit? You didn't hear about that? They were detained.
You never heard about this?
Yeah.
I think the 9/11 Commission was a hoax and a lie.
What were they covering up?
They were covering up because there was so much negligence in preparing America before that attack in both parties that they covered the essence of both parties. They didn't cover up anything about the attack itself. What they covered up was negligence on the part of senior bureaucrats and senior officials in both the Clinton and the Bush administration.
Any thoughts about Building 7, sir?
I don't know anything about that. Somebody asked me the other day.
Oh, really? You should check it out. Here, check this out then. They'll tell you about it. This is the federal engineers who are questioning 9/11. Architects and engineers for 9/11.
Thank you, sir.
Check that out.
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Thank you, sir. Bye.
Incident on October 10th of 2001 down at the Mexican Parliament, which is actually the day after that high-grade Ames strain anthrax was postmarked to Dashiell and Leahy, where two Israeli agents were caught breaching a security perimeter with two Glock 9mm, grenades, C4, and two Pakistani passports. And so it's those two Pakistani passports that make people like me think that, you know, Western intelligence agencies, MI5, CIA, Mossad, are utilizing these Islamic jihadis as patsies.
What do you make of the Israeli art students?
That's a very good question. Yeah, well, there's a couple different stories. Well, that's two. Yeah, there's the 5 dancing Israelis who were detained celebrating the crashing of the planes into the towers. But the other part about that is they were caught in these urban moving system white vans with explosives residue. It looked like the dog reacted to it, and then they were detained for 40 days, and it appears they failed lie detector tests. So, what do you think?
I find that, I must admit, the thing about the Israeli case is it's kind of distasteful to suggest it. I don't know.
I'm Jewish, and it's disturbing to me that people who claim their Jewishness would use terror and blame it on.
So, but you have to be very careful though, because that argument has been taken up by the Arab world, obviously, to suggest that, you know, Mossad or something. I want to hold my tongue because I certainly have no evidence. I have no evidence to suggest any of that is true.
But there's a lot more evidence to connect Mossad with 9/11 than there is to connect Muslims with 9/11. And the fact that we're willing to go and defend the official story that says only Muslims are capable of bloodthirsty acts like that, and not Christians and Jews.
We're gonna.
That's what's disturbing to me as a Jewish man. I don't want my own Jewish people to allow other people in our name to use terror and blame it on our half-brothers, the Muslims.
Okay.
And the Mossad has a very long track record of doing it, and so does the CIA.
Okay.
And so we got to stop them.
There's some information. You mean Mr. Shenon?
Yes, hi.
Hi, I'm not one of the folks, but I heard you on the radio talk to somebody, and I thought you seemed to soft pedal the claims that there was anything unusual in our lack of air cover.
Well, no, I just said it was just incompetently handled. Actually, NORAD, but I mean NORAD.
The war games and everything on that day wasn't necessarily anything.
Well, I don't know. I hope I didn't misspeak. No, the evidence suggests that NORAD just bungled. You know, NORAD and the FAA really did a lousy job that morning.
Can that be proven, though, evidentiarily, that they bungled it as opposed to it being somehow administratively appeared to be bungled?
Either that or they
and
did
was the
an
number of
excellent
war games
job.
unusual? Or
The
not
mission
unusual?
wasn't what we thought it was, and they did an excellent job. And that's corroborated by the fact that there weren't people demoted or fired or court-martialed, with the exception of a few tokens. People were promoted, reinstated.
Well, I do find
it
it amazing that 7 years later, not one human being was ever demoted, not one human being was ever fired. Some of the key folks got better jobs out of all.
I mean, there are computer logs of all of the radar information. There's computer logs of all the points of interest that they are tracking, and an explanation of what those points are, and if there's any questions.
Well, you'll see in the book that
even under the
FAA, the commissioners and the staff clearly believe the FAA and the NORAD were trying to hide information from them about what went wrong. What went wrong? They were trying to hide information because actually, what the record showed was that they really messed up.
But there's an impression in the media that I believe is incorrect, and that is that all of those war games were not administrated under a central umbrella, and they were under Dick Cheney's command subordinately, and under him. And all of those war games, the people in charge of any one of them were aware of all the others. So as far as being able to manage all that data and manage that operation, I don't buy this explanation that this was, unless you can prove to me, you're implying that it is a incompetence or error or misidentifying targets on radar systems and not acting appropriately or not forwarding information. I mean, under a war games test, that's part of the test. You want to see if there is any problem, right, in the flow of information. But what I'm telling you is that if you can't demonstratively prove that it was incompetence through the record, which is attainable under congressional order, for example, or under a court order, then you can't imply that it was due to a failure or incompetence, any more than I can prove that it was actually underhandedly botched, intentionally, under the umbrella of total control of those war games. The other issue I wanted to ask you when they brought up the dancing Israelis, I don't know much about the documentation of when they were arrested, what the circumstances were. Did you
go to the internet, go under DEA and Israeli and art students, and you'll find a lot written. But there are a group of traveling Israeli art students who are selling their art, apparently. And there were people.
They were selling their, I'm sorry?
Art. Okay. And the DEA had a lot of suspicions about what they were really up to.
And did the 911 Commission look at any of that information?
I think they did. I'm not sure they went into sort of detail. Okay. And other people have knocked down the DEA reports, but it was an official investigation by DEA, and they did.
But were they found to have residues of explosives? Is that documented in some way?
I'm going to claim to be a bad reporter and say.
Was it the DEA?
I would find that hard to believe.
Was the DEA the party that arrested them, or was it the New York police? Or
I don't know. You know the answer.
I don't know actually.
Did the DEA arrest them? I don't think so. I think some of them may have been deported.
I know that. I heard that, but I actually haven't seen any of the documentation. But
the other thing to censor always.
But actually, let me make one point though. I don't think anybody's. I mean, the argument I've heard, and I'm not necessarily buying any of it though, is that not that the Israelis were any part of this, but that they were monitoring, they were keeping an eye on Al Qaeda, what they believe to be Al Qaeda people in the United States, and they may not have been fully sharing that information. Yeah, not that they were part of the plot, but they were part.
Well, if you believe the warnings of the Mossad and the Israeli Defense Forces, prior warnings to 911 and the other countries.
To be honest with you, I guess the FBI said prior to 9/11 that they believed there were active Al Qaeda cells in the United States, and the Israelis presumably would know that as well, and the Israelis might have good reason to want to follow if they could figure out who these
German
people
intelligence,
were.
and the warnings were made, and there's much other information that's been presented by the commission as stovepiping.
But the problem is, I don't think I've heard any reasonable argument that Mossad was involved. I've heard the argument that Mossad may have been wanting to track some of these people.
I'm actually not submitting that argument. I'm simply saying.
No, but I'm worried that where.
I know you are, and I understand your concern.